Well, hey, welcome back to Focus. I wonder if you've had any challenges this week. If you have, what was your response to them? Were you angry, annoyed, frustrated, irritable? Or on the flip side of that, were you patient? Were you looking at it through a really positive lens, a lens where you could take away all the good things from it? Opportunities to learn, opportunities to grow. What was your reaction? The truth is, when we're faced with a struggle, when we're faced with a challenge, we end up outside of our comfort zone, don't we? Now, hey, our comfort zone is somewhere where we feel safe, where we feel secure, where we feel protected and relaxed. It's somewhere where we can operate in without too much stress. That would be what our comfort zone is. But when we're faced with a struggle, when we're faced with a challenge, that isn't where we're sitting, is it? We're outside of our comfort zone. But something really amazing happens when we're outside of our comfort zone. You see, you're able to increase your capacity. You're able to experience new opportunities. You're able to learn and grow much faster because you're faced with something that you're not comfortable with and you end up having to develop. Now, this whole series has been all about unlocking your potential. And the truth is, when you're outside of your comfort zone, you unlock your potential much quicker. It's really difficult to unlock your potential when you're stuck in your comfort zone. Now, hey, your comfort zone is incredible. It's great for when you're trying to relax, unwind, recharge. But maybe today, God's challenging you to take a little step outside of your comfort zone. It's often said that nothing life-changing happens in the comfort zone. Nothing life-changing happens when you're in your comfort zone. Now, Paul talks a little bit about challenges in his book to the Romans, or his letter to the Romans. It's in Romans chapter 5, verses 3 to 5. And it says this: "We can rejoice too when we run into problems and trials, for we know that they help us develop endurance. And endurance develops strength of character, and character strengthens our confident hope of salvation." Only up to verse 4, actually. So the next time that you run into a problem, you run into a challenge, why not try and look at it in a different way? Why not try and look at it through the lens of the potential that is in that challenge, in that situation, and actually see how you can grow as a result of it? Okay, let's get really, really practical. We're going to take some tips from the story of David and Goliath, one of my favorite stories in the Bible. And if you want to check out the whole story, you can find it in 1 Samuel 17, verses 32 to 51. But we haven't got time to look through the whole thing. But 4 really practical tips that you can implement when you're in a challenge or in a situation. And the first one we can find in verses 33 to 36, where it says, "Don't be ridiculous," Saul replied. "There's no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You're only a boy. And he's been a man of war since his youth." But David persisted. He's like, "Whoa, hang on a minute. I've been taking care of my father's sheep and goats," he said. "When a lion or bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. I've done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do this to Goliath too." So what is he doing? Well, he's encouraging himself through his past experience. He's looking at what skills he can transfer from what he's done in the past and use and implement in the present. So tip number 1 is encourage yourself through your past experience. Encourage yourself through your past experience. Tip number 2 can be found in the verse after that, verse 37, where it says, "The Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. He'll rescue me from Goliath." David, in this situation, he's reminding himself of God's previous faithfulness. So tip number 2 is remind yourself of God's previous faithfulness. Tip number 3, here it comes. This is found in verse 38 to 40. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically, this is where Saul gives David his armor. And David puts it on. He's really not used to it, so he has a little walk. And he decides, I can't wear this because, hey, I'm just not used to it. So he takes it off and he goes and he picks up 5 stones. And he goes to battle Goliath with his 5 stones and his sling. But what has he done? He's chosen his weapon wisely. He hasn't just gone with the weapon which everybody else would use, because let's be honest, if a soldier was in that situation, they would have taken Saul's armor and they would have felt like this was the right thing. David, on the other hand, doesn't do that. He uses what he's used to, what he knows is going to work for him. So when you're in a challenge, tip number 3 is pick your weapon wisely, or choose your weapon wisely. It doesn't have to be what everybody else would do. It has to be what will work for you. And that rhymed. Come on. Okay, lastly, tip number 4. We are running out of time. And this can be found a little bit later on in the story, verses 45 to 46, where it says, David replied to the Philistine, "You come to me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today, the Lord will conquer you." Okay, what is David doing? He's given the battle to God. He says, the Lord will conquer you, not I'm going to conquer you. It's not my battle, it's God's. So tip number 4, give the battle, give the challenge to God. Let's just run through these tips before we finish. Tip number 1 was encourage yourself through your past experience. Tip number 2, remind yourself of God's previous faithfulness. Tip number 3, choose your weapon wisely. And finally, tip number 4, give the battle to God. Now, hey, I hope you guys have enjoyed this Unlocked Potential series, and that it's actually been a benefit to you, and you've been able to take some really practical things from it. I'm almost up to 7 minutes, so I need to stop. But hey, have a great day, guys, and try and implement these really practical tips the next time you're faced with a challenge.